You wake up hungry, not skip breakfast hungry, the kind of hungry that has been building for 2 days. There is no fridge, no store, no plan. Somewhere out there in 11 million square kilometers of grassland, forest, and river delta is your next meal. You don't know where. You don't know what. And if you guess wrong, your children don't eat either. That was every single morning for over 95% of human history. No farms, no granaries, no safety net. And yet we survived. Not by luck, by something far stranger. Ancient humans built an entire invisible science of finding food, one so precise that some of it is only now being decoded by researchers watching the last hunting societies on Earth. So, how did people with no maps, no writing, and no agriculture manage to eat every day for 200,000 years? The answer starts with a mistake almost every documentary makes. Imagine the image most of us grew up with: a caveman with a club, chasing a mammoth, hoping to get lucky. Throw that image away. Random searching for food burns more calories than it finds. A species that fed itself by luck would have starved out within a few generations. Instead, evidence from campsites, tools, and isotopes in ancient bones tells a different story. Early humans weren't wandering. They were reading. Reading the land like a language, a bent blade of grass, a shift in bird behavior, the angle of shadows at a watering hole. To an untrained eye, none of it means anything. To someone raised in it since childhood, it's a sentence, and that sentence says, food is close. But knowing food is close was never the hard part. Finding it before someone or something else did, that was the real problem. Now imagine you found a berry bush loaded with fruit. Good news. Except you're not the only one watching it. Birds are watching it. Monkeys are watching it, if you're in the right region. Other bands of humans are watching it too. Fruit ripens for days, not months. Miss the window and the food is gone, eaten by something faster than you. So early humans didn't just search, they tracked time itself. Anthropological studies of surviving hunter-gatherer groups, from the Hadza of Tanzania to the San of the Kalahari, show something remarkable. Entire mental calendars built without a single written word, mapping which plants fruit in which weeks, which roots swell after which rains, which trees the bees favor when the honey is at its thickest. This wasn't guesswork. It was memory passed down as survival software, updated every generation. But plants could only carry a small group so far. The real breakthrough, the one that changed everything, came from something far more dangerous. Here's the twist most people never hear. Early humans were terrible sprinters. No claws, no fangs built for killing. Compared to a lion or a cheetah, a human being should have been near the bottom of the food chain. So how did slow, weak, clawless primates end up eating meat regularly enough to fuel a growing brain? Picture this instead of a chase. Not a sprint, but a walk. A long, relentless, exhausting walk. Sometimes for hours under a blazing sun, following the same terrified animal across open ground. Most predators overheat and give up. Humans don't. We sweat instead of pant, which means, incredibly, humans can outlast almost anything on Earth over long distances. This is called persistence hunting, and researchers who've studied it in remaining hunting cultures describe something almost eerie. A hunter tracking an animal not by sight, but by reading a single hoofprint pressed into dry soil, guessing its age down to the hour. Eventually, the animal collapses from heat exhaustion, and a species with no claws, no fangs, and no speed brings down prey that could otherwise outrun it in seconds. Now, think about what that actually requires. Not brute strength, pattern recognition. A hunter has to predict where a frightened, exhausted animal will run before it runs there, sometimes cutting across the landscape to meet it rather than following behind. That takes a working model of another creature's mind: its fear, its instincts, its likely path. Some researchers believe this kind of predictive tracking may have shaped how human thinking itself developed, an early form of reasoning about the future, built not in a classroom, but in the dirt. But tracking and running weren't the whole story either. There was one tool that changed the entire game: fire. Not just for warmth, not just for safety at night. Fire meant something almost nobody expects. It turned inedible parts of the world into food. Roots that were toxic raw became safe when cooked. Meat that would take enormous energy to chew and digest raw became easier to process, releasing more calories faster. Some researchers argue this single shift, the ability to cook, may be connected to why the human brain, an organ that devours roughly 20% of our daily energy, was able to grow as large as it did. Suddenly, finding food wasn't only about hunting and gathering, it was about transformation, turning what the land offered into something the body could actually use. And that changed the map completely. Because once fire entered the picture, groups no longer needed to follow food constantly. They could process it, sometimes even preserve it, which meant something almost nobody expects from primitive societies: seasonal planning. Here's the part that upends the whole wandering caveman idea for good. Many hunter gatherer groups didn't roam aimlessly. They moved in patterns, returning to the same river bend every spring when fish ran upstream, the same valley every autumn when nuts fell, the same coastline every summer when shellfish beds refilled. This was a calendar with no numbers, no calendar at all in the way we'd recognize one, just memory, story, and the older generation teaching the younger one where to be and when. Miss the timing by even a week, and an entire season's food source could vanish. Get it right, year after year, and a group could feed dozens of people without planting a single seed. It's almost farming, without the farm. And these roots weren't secret to just one family. They were shared knowledge argued over, defended, sometimes fought over between neighboring groups. A river bend thick with spawning fish wasn't just a meal. It was territory worth remembering, worth teaching, worth passing down like an inheritance with no paperwork at all, which raises the real question buried underneath all of this. If ancient humans had already built calendars, cooking, tracking, and seasonal routes that fed people reliably for tens of thousands of years, why did anyone ever bother inventing farming at all? That question still doesn't have a fully settled answer. Climate shifts, population pressure, and dwindling wild herds all likely played a role. But many researchers now believe farming wasn't an upgrade at first. Early farmers were often shorter, sicker, and worked harder than the foragers before them, which means the story we tell ourselves, that farming was progress and hunting and gathering was primitive struggle, may have it backwards. The people who came before agriculture weren't lost, hungry wanderers stumbling through the wilderness. They were something closer to scientists, cartographers, and physicists of the natural world, holding an entire ecosystem's worth of knowledge in memory alone. So the next time hunger hits and you open a fridge without thinking twice, remember this. Somewhere behind that convenience is 200,000 years of people who had none of it and figured out how to eat anyway, one red of the land at a time. The only real question left is whether we've lost more than we've gained.